I call this 31st meeting of the BOIE to order.
Agenda, of course, is minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, shall the minutes be adopted? Thank you. Second item, business arising from the minutes. Alors, est-ce qu'il y a des affaires découlant des...
Are there any business arising from previous meetings? I see no hands raised. I ask for this item to be adopted. Adopted. Third item on our agenda is a possible donation of a table to the Montserrat Legislative Assembly. I'll ask Ms. Rebecca Klipke to come to the table.
A couple of opening comments on this, however. This is a matter which was raised with me at the 75th Commonwealth Speakers meeting at Westminster. And other parliaments were considered. The parliament in Montserrat had been consumed by a volcano. They've moved their capital, and now they're rebuilding their legislature. And they had sought assistance from other parliaments if they wanted to make any contributions in kind to this effect. And so I'll ask Ms. Kletke to run us through the proposition.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So following the request that the Speaker received during the March Commonwealth meeting,
taken away the request, and we've done an internal costing with our trades team to provide the board a broad estimate of what a construction using the services of our trade services team internally of a table for the Legislative Assembly of Montserrat, what it would cost from a material perspective. And also we've included in that estimate, as you can see in the note, the potential travel costs. The table to be shipped to Montserrat would have to be disassembled. This is a table that is will be, should the board approve, be made by master craftspeople and requires a technical expertise to reconstruct once on site. So we've laid out what it would cost, and we've also worked with our financial and legal services colleagues on the approval process for these types of donations. So as Mr. Fergus has... Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. As Mr. Fergus has outlined, this is a request that we've received. It's certainly in line with other donations that are common, that is a long-standing tradition between Commonwealth parliaments to make such donations. So we leave this to the board to discuss the possibility of this donation to Montserrat.
I have on the speaking list Mr. Julian and Madame de Faillefeu, si vous voulez juste signaler votre...
If you could tell me whether that's just a raised hand?
I had the fortune to visit Montserrat a few years ago, and it's hard to understate the incredible devastation of that volcanic eruption. The capital city, the major city, completely devastated, and the impacts are still felt today. The southern portion of the island is still uninhabitable. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people had to seek refuge off the island, and the island has very, very few resources, and they've been trying to rebuild ever since. So given the incredible devastation, the refugees, the fact that the island is struggling to rebuild after something that was an apocalyptic event that destroyed everything, including the airport, the capital, most of the major commerce, and schools, hospital. It seems to me that this is a modest donation, but very symbolic, just the same, in solidarity. between the people of Canada and the people of Montserrat. And so I certainly support this contribution to their rebuilding efforts that continue today.
Ms. Finley.
Just a point of clarification, and I agree that these Commonwealth connections and providing something like this would be a good gesture for Canada. On the travel costs, is that for the craftsmen to go and reassemble? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Any other questions? Do I see a consensus to proceed? Good. Thank you. On va passer au item.
We're going to move on to point 4, annual report on the members of the House of Commons Workplace Harassment and Violence Prevention Policy for 2023-2024. And I will invite somebody whom we know very well, Ms. Caroline Evangelidis, to the table.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I'm presenting to you the annual report for 2023-2024 on the members of the House of Commons Workplace Harassment and Violence Prevention Policy, which applies to members as employers as well as to their employees. From April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024, 17 new cases were reported to the Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer. 9 of those 17 cases were related to cases involving third parties and were closed following a review of the workplace assessment. As we continue to raise awareness, educate, and provide tools on the policy, we believe we will continue to see an increase in the number of reported cases. This allows employers to be aware of the risks and the health and safety risks in their workplaces and to support a safe and positive working environment for their employees.
Also details the training and awareness activities related to this policy framework. This includes informing members' employees about their obligation regarding workplace harassment and violence prevention during their onboarding, confirming that all active MPs have completed the mandatory training. So to further support members in their role as employers and promote a healthy and safe workplace for all, we, in collaboration with the Sergeant-at-Arms Office, are continually reviewing our security awareness trainings and implementing preventative measures to maintain a safe and healthy environment to all. We are happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments?
Madam Finley?
Thank you for this. You mentioned 5 complaints last year that concerned multiple grounds. Can you just break that down for us a little bit? What are the overlaps? Maybe I can ask you my 2 questions, and then you can answer.
Sure.
Is that all right, Chair? And also, I was wondering about this trend up. Is that, I think you said, increased awareness, which I understand, that's probable. As a lawyer in a past life, I dealt with a lot of these kinds of issues. What I was wondering about, though, is that the reason, or are we seeing an increase? What about trends in other places, other workplaces? Is that an issue, or do you feel it's just more about awareness and processes?
I'll answer your second question, and I'll pass on your first question to my colleague to answer. For your second question, I believe definitely awareness does promote more opportunity for individuals to understand what are the processes in place. So usually when you put in a new policy, it takes a couple of years before it's 100% implemented and people feel comfortable with it. So we want to see, I'm not going to say we want to see the uptake because we don't want harassment in the workplace, but it is normal to see an uptake. This said, we are seeing, I think the environment today also speaks to more harassment in the world. I think it's a subject that is spoken to quite a bit. So awareness, not just in our workplace, but I think globally, is something that is prominent. Yeah. So for the first question, though.
Thank you for your question. So multiple grounds means essentially that the person that came with their complaint, they were complaining about different situation, but also on different grounds, meaning potentially general harassment, psychological harassment, and maybe even violence in certain circumstances.
Madame de Bellefeuille.
Merci, merci, Monsieur
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Monsieur le Président.
My question, Mr. Chair, I understand that there will be an uptick because the policy is getting to be known, and that's what we're looking for policies to be known about, so that people know what to do to get the support they need. That's good news. Over the next few years, I expect to see a continued uptick, increase, because it's a policy that will continue to be more widely known as time goes on. My question is more on the side of, since the policy was implemented, have you seen similar types of complaints that were resolved that in a way that was acceptable to both parties, or that could perhaps lead to some kind of training to avoid any kind of trend that we see in the behaviors that would lead to complaints, that could perhaps help decrease the number of cases? Are there any trends in terms of harassment? Is there anything we could do to better train people to avoid things that come up over and over again over the years?
Merci pour la question. Donc, par vous, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would say that there are certainly, well, really, it's respect and civility that we're talking about, that we are trying to promote. That's where a lot of our training is being focused on, and we need to keep focusing on that.
We have a new tool here at the House that is available now and will be launched to members soon.
And it will support you as members. It will show you what types of trainings are available to you. And you can suggest to your employees also, or look together to see what they should be taking as in terms of training. That will give you the opportunity to look at what training is available. And as a team, we are here to suggest various sessions to you also. I believe there is a new training session that was provided recently, I believe, if you want to talk about it. You're talking about the security one? Yes.
Sergeant d'Armes.
We are working in close collaboration with the Sergeant at Arms Office and Parliamentary Security Services. So this good collaboration helps us de-escalate situations and ensure that we have a harassment-free workplace and a workplace that's free of violence as well. So it takes collaboration between human resources and Sergeant at Arms resources to find solutions to potential situations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Ms. de Bellefeuille.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So on the onset, I just want to say that I really appreciate the increased training and the professionalism that I've seen in getting to resolutions. I am wondering, in terms of, I didn't see in the report the number of employers we have now currently that are under this policy, and how many employees do we have? We had an increase in the number of employees since 2021. And then also in terms of these complaints, is there overlap in terms of like, are there numerous complaints for one employer, or are these all separate complaints for separate employers?
Yeah, thank you for the question, through you, Mr. Speaker. So the increase for the training itself for the employees, and this is what I was referring to earlier, so you're going to have access to actually see, every member is going to have access to their employees, and they can see what training they've done. The awareness is there. I could tell you, if my mind serves me right, I think we've had 1919 employees take the training, staffers take the training since 2021. Now we're looking at that on a regular basis to ensure all active employees at this time actually have done it. And what we'll be doing is a follow-up with you, and it's up to the employer to encourage their employees to be taking the training, of course. As for your second question, sorry, it was...
It was along the lines of the numbers of employers we currently have and employees, just to have an idea as to, these are 17 complaints amongst how many employers and individuals. And then my follow-up to that is also, are any of these complaints about the same individual, same employer, or are they all separate standalone complaints about separate employers?
So for your second question, if I may, the same... it's not all the same employers. I can say that. It is multiple, and usually when we're seeing the type of complaint that's coming in, there's a lot of the third party, as we were talking about, and part of that is a lot from public, if I were to go even further. So it's really not directed to one particular employer or one office, if you may.
If I could follow up on that. So if I understand correctly, each complaint is about a separate employer, and it could be made from third parties, as we see. And are you saying that you're also seeing a rise in complaints coming from third parties?
Correct.
As compared to the employees?
Correct.
Okay. And I also see that the number of complaints withdrawn is substantial enough, given the number of complaints. Is that usually due to the fact that the person feels that they won't have a satisfactory outcome from the process, or is it due to other reasons that I'm unaware of?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Speaker, it is because each situation is really evaluated case by case, and that's where the team professionals will go in and actually speak to the employees to make sure, or to whoever's doing the complaint, and assess each situation. And at that point, if the individual putting in a complaint feels fairly satisfied that there's a different route to take, they have withdrawn. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it was because they don't feel that they can go forward. I would say it's more because they're satisfied with the potential result that could be taken outside of going through the full resolution process.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have on the speaking list Mr. Julian.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour votre...
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the work. It's extremely important that you have provided us with this report. I find it concerning that the number of complaints has gone up, but it's a little bit reassuring that there is more understanding as to the importance of this procedure. So thank you very much for all the work you've done on this file. But I just have one question. Are there other cases that are not captured by this report, cases touching the Parliament, situations that have been the subject of civil court cases or other situations? So does this report capture everything? That's a very good question. Thank you. We can only report on the cases that are brought to us. So I'm not really sure. I cannot really provide you with 100% confirmation that there are other cases or other situations going on elsewhere. But when there is a complaint, the chief officer can come and provide information on that. But I cannot say yes 100%. But it is possible. It's possible. Is there no way to capture this information? Because the complaint procedure is very important, resolution procedure is equally important, but if there are other elements that are subject of judicial procedures or court cases, it would be important to know, is there any way we can get this information? We might maybe find a way to get this information. Maybe Michelle would like to answer the question. Thank you, Mr. Julian, for the question. The report that's before you today is really the regulatory report as per the Canadian Labour Code, and that has to do with the nature of the complaints. When you look at the employer-employee relations that the MPs have with their staff, there will be some exchanges, there might be complaints sometimes, without necessarily turning into formal complaints as per the Canadian Labour Code. So be it human resources services or legal services that are provided to help the MPs as the employer or equally the employees to follow the procedure, we need the representation that is necessary. But unfortunately, there is no report to provide this information to the Board of Internal Economy, but all cases, whether human resources cases or legal service cases that are brought to our attention, are followed up on. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, first of all, thank you, Ms. Evangelidis and Ms. Beauparent and Ms. Carpentier for your continued work on this very important file. And let us continue reminding people and raising awareness, because we all have responsibilities when it comes to what's professional, what's acceptable, and what's not professional and acceptable. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, we will now move on to move in camera, rather. So we will need a couple of minutes to transition, and then we'll continue and have discussions about other topics. We're suspended.